If you have been with us the last few weeks, you know that during Lent, we've been looking at foundations of the faith. And what could be more foundational, perhaps, than the Ten Commandments, which we heard in the first reading. And see, there again, this is one of those things that perhaps, maybe you could name most of them, know a little bit about them, of course, but perhaps today we could dig in a little bit and pick up just a little bit more, help us in our foundations, if you will. Let me start by a hypothetical example. Supposing, if you will, if you can picture a man who is in line for confession. And it's a bit of a line, and so he's got some time, so he starts running through the Ten Commandments, an examination of conscience. See if he, what should he tell the priest when it's his turn? So it might go something like this. The guy says to himself, first commandment, thou shalt not have other gods before me. I don't have to worry about that. I don't have any wooden idol statue things in the house. I don't bow down and worship them. Don't have to do that. Number two, don't take the Lord's name in vain. Well, it's true, I swear, but I never include God's name when I swear, so we don't have to worry about that. Let's see. Remember the Sabbath. Number three, remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. Haven't missed Mass since my last confession. Good there. Honor thy father and mother. Well, that's mostly a commandment for kids, but my relationship with my parents is, okay, I guess. So that's all right. Let's see, number five, thou shalt not kill. I have never killed anybody. Number six, thou shalt not commit adultery. Nope, I'm good about that. Faithful to my wife, that's okay. Let's see, number seven, thou shalt not steal. Nope, I do not rob banks. I do not steal cars. I don't do things like that. So we're done with that. Number eight, thou shalt not bear false witness. I don't lie. I don't tell big lies. I mean, the only lies I tell are the ones I don't want to hurt people's feelings, things like that. That's fine. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Well, that's easy. She's not good looking anyway. And thou shalt not cover thy neighbor's goods, the things he owns. I don't have to worry about that either because I have a better car than he does. So, oh my word, I have nothing to confess. And he turns and walks out the door. I'm glad you laughed at that, by the way. But the point is that not somewhat what some of us do with at least some of the commandments? We just dismiss them too quickly. Thou shalt not kill. I don't kill anybody. Next. But what is the mistake we're making at that point? I think the mistake may be that in those moments, what we're thinking is that the Ten Commandments are just the 10 Commandments. That's it. 10 statements. And that's it. They're in their own little packet, if you will. And that's not true. 10 Commandments go back to a time when there were things called covenants. And you may have known that term, but, God made a covenant with Israel. And any covenant, whether it was God with Israel or some sort of agreement between two nations, an agreement between two people, it was sort of, if you will, like a bit of a legal document, and it started with a summary statement. You gave a summary of this is what's in the agreement, and then you wrote out the agreement. The Ten Commandments are a summary of 613 laws. The Ten Commandments are a summary of Jewish law. And you have to understand that they're a summary, because otherwise you'll do the, I don't kill anybody, and just move on. But thou shalt not kill summarizes a whole bunch of other things. And so in order to really do a good examination of conscience, you have to be willing to say, what is this getting at? When it says, remember the Sabbath to keep it holy, it does not mean just I have to go to Mass on Sunday. That's part of it, sure, but that is not all of it. And unless you're willing to dig around and ask yourself, well, what is this commandment? What's God trying to get me to do? And then find out if you do those things. Till you do that, pardon me, till you do that, you're going to be like my guy in the confessional line, and you're going to have nothing to confess. So let me see if I can help you with this. I thought we might look together at the 7th commandment, thou shalt not steal, and see if perhaps I can expand that out for you, much like if you got a lump of dough and you're kind of rolling it out in different directions. Let's just roll this out. See if you can get some sense that thou shalt not steal is just a summary. To steal, of course, is to take something that does not belong to you. And so, it's certainly true. You should not rob banks. That's taking something that doesn't belong to you. Don't steal cars. I get that. But maybe one of the first things you could do to sort of expand this out is to remind yourself that that statement includes little things. It's not just big things. The person that would go to a hotel, for example, and they wouldn't think of taking the towels as they left when they checked out, but they, because that would be stealing, but they don't think anything about taking all the unused soap and shampoo. By the way, for those of you who are asking about this in your head right now, it is entirely possible that the hotel would gladly give you those things. But until you ask, I don't know that it's your right to take them just because they happen to be in the room. But my point is that some of us have this distinction. It's only stealing if it's a certain amount or bigger. And we might do well just to remind ourselves that, no, if I by chance, maybe by complete accident, walk out of the bank with one of their pens, wait, that's not my pen, and maybe it's worth my while to go back and either give it back to them or ask them, this is a lovely pen, may I have it? In which case, I'm sure they'd say yes, because it's got their name on it. The other thing along these lines is sometimes we think it's not stealing if what we're doing affects a big entity. I wonder if this is why people are, it's easier for them to cheat on their taxes. Because you read in the news, whatever spending bill Congress is working on, it's, billions and trillions and millions of dollars, that kind of stuff. And you want to oh, wait, I'm supposed to write down the couple $100 I won from the lottery? Oh, well, that's not going to matter. It's the government. They got all this money. And maybe we figure, that's how we sort of justify it, and we don't think it's stealing. Or the same thing with insurance companies, perhaps. Insurance companies, they're big, they got all this money, and so my little whatever it is, maybe that doesn't matter. It's also worth reminding, if you want to roll out the dough, if you will, in a different direction, remind ourselves that we can steal things that are not material from other people. Do you remember, maybe this has happened to you, maybe you've seen it, kid comes home from school, Mom, I got an A on my history test. And big brother says, wait, I know about that test. It was easy. Everybody got an A on that test. And you stole the kid's joy, stole the success right out of them. People occasionally, it didn't happen often, thankfully, but up at seminary, my climbing partner and I, we'd get back from, something we had done, telling a story, something that was really kind of cool that had happened to us, and somebody would jump in real quick with, you guys shouldn't do that. That's really dangerous. Now, admittedly, at times it was dangerous. It's not an unreasonable comment, but when they said it, in the way they said it and at the timing they said it, they were just trying to suck our success, our joy, right out of the conversation. Certainly, this is one of the reasons why gossip is so awful, is we end up potentially stealing someone's reputation. You know, we hear something, we don't know if it's true or not, but we're happy to pass it on to somebody else. And as we do that, especially if we pass on a falsehood, maybe unknown to us, maybe we don't know it's false, but when we pass it on, we're just stealing the person's good name, their reputation. Lots of things that you can steal from people, from organizations, from groups that are not material in nature. If you want to roll the dough out in a different direction, and I will admit a very challenging direction, you can dig into this the way the church fathers did. Some of them talked about the idea that it was stealing if someone did not have something that they should have, that they were due to have, and you had too much of it. To take an example that they used, this is how they talked about feeding the poor. From their point of view, the way you and I would word it in our culture, everybody has a right to food. Everybody has a right to be fed. And the church fathers would said that if my refrigerator is full and there are people who do not have enough food, I am stealing from them because I have what they have a right to have. Now, I'll tell you up front, this gets messy and tricky as you get into it, but it is an interesting way to look at that commandment. Is it possible when you and I look at people who do not have what we have, whether that's the material necessities of life in particular, or particular freedoms or abilities or opportunities, things like that, as we look at that, it might be helpful to us just to give this angle some thought. Is it possible that in some way the fact that this person does not have what they need, something that is due them, is it possible that I have an obligation to that? And if I do not fulfill my obligation, whatever that happens to be, then I'm stealing from them. Hope you get the point. You can do this with all 10 commandments. You can dig in and try to figure out, what is it that God is actually getting at. Now, for most people, the easiest way for you to do this is just go online and type in examination of conscience. And you'll get all these examples where someone has sat down and they take each commandment and they turn it into 4, 5, 6 questions, and sort of try to help you help me in trying to figure out, well, what does this commandment mean? It is a terrific tool. It's not the end of it, though, because they only, whoever writes them, they sort of typically have a slant to them. If you find an examination of conscience for teenagers, for example, it'll sort of slant the questions to teenagers. But as you do that, I think it's a terrific start. But here's the bottom line. This is not about, he wants me to dig into all these commandments so that basically I end up feeling guilty, so that I end up going to confession with this crazy long list of all this stuff. It's not really the point. The point is to draw closer to God. Sin is what separates us from God. And we're separated from God by our sin, even if we don't actually know that sin. And so here's the thing. The more we learn about the 10 Commandments, the more we're willing to dig in, the more we're willing to admit that, I don't rob banks, but maybe I need to really pay attention to my gossip. The more I do that, then the more I'm aware of my sin, the more certainly I can achieve a better confession. Reconciliation will become this more meaningful moment for me. But most importantly, as I deal with some of these areas of my life, I will remove sin from my life, which means I'll draw closer to God. That is, of course, what we all want to do, to draw closer. So I encourage you this week, maybe look it up, give some thought to it, whatever you want to do. That as you do that, make sure that you realize that your goal is to draw closer to our Lord.